I'm a deep-sea diver. We found something on a sunken nuclear submarine that should have stayed lost. By silent screams. Don't forget to like and subscribe. There are two kinds of people in my line of work, those who are running from something on the surface and those who are being pulled by something in the deep. I've never been sure which one I am. My name is Elias Vance. I'm a deep-sea salvage diver. For 15 years, the bottom of the ocean has been my office. I've seen things you wouldn't believe. Spanish galleons spilling gold into the silt, fighter jets from forgotten wars, entire shipping containers full of brand new sneakers. I've always said that the deep is just a museum with bad lighting. But I was wrong. It's not a museum, it's a graveyard, and some of its ghosts are still waiting. The job that changed everything came on a Tuesday. The client was a shadowy government contractor with a bottomless budget. The target, the USS Odyssey, a Cold War fast attack submarine that vanished without a trace in the late 70s. It was supposed to be a ghost, a myth, but they'd found it, lying in the abyssal plain 3 miles down in the kind of crushing dark that sunlight has never touched. The mission was simple. Get in, retrieve the ship's experimental reactor, core data recorder, and get out. The payout was enough to retire on. That should have been the first red flag. In my business, you don't get paid for the work. You get paid for the risk. Our vessel was the Triton, a rust bucket salvage ship that had more character than seaworthiness. There were only 4 of us. Marcus was the captain, a man whose face was a roadmap of bad weather and worse decisions. Ava was our tech guru, a brilliant woman half my age who could make a 30-year-old sonar array sing. And then there was Griggs, my backup diver, a barrel-chested Russian with more superstitions than teeth. A skeleton crew for a ghost ship. It was fitting. The dive itself was the usual routine of terrifying precision. Getting sealed into the ADS, the atmospheric diving suit, is like being bolted into your own personal submarine. It's a 7-foot-tall, 1,000-pound suit of armor they call the Iron Man. It keeps the pressure out. At 3 miles down, the ocean is exerting over 7,000 pounds of force on every square inch of you. Without the suit, you'd be turned into a pink mist in less than a second. The descent is a long, lonely fall. For 2 hours, I watched the world fade through my tiny viewport. First the blues, then the greens, until all that's left is black. A perfect, absolute blackness that feels older than the stars. The only things that exist are the hiss of your own breathing, the disembodied voices of your crew over the comms, and the twin beams of your suit's lights, cutting a pathetic slice through the infinite dark. Approaching the seafloor, Eli, Eva's voice crackled in my ear, reading a large mass 200 meters to your port. And then I saw it, the Odyssey. My lights washed over a long black shape half buried in the silt. It was eerie. Wrecks are usually violent affairs, twisted metal and gaping wounds. But the Odyssey was whole, perfect. It looked like it had simply parked, like the crew was asleep inside. I landed the ADS on the seafloor, the suit's heavy feet sinking into the pale, dead mud. I made my way to the main hatch. It was sealed, as expected. But the hull around it, it was covered in strange, deep scratches, long, gouging marks like something enormous had tried to claw its way in, or out. Marcus, the hull is compromised. The exterior shows signs of, well, it looks like claw marks, I said into the comm. Silence for a moment. Then Marcus's gruff voice, "Forget the paint job, Vance. Just get inside and find that recorder." I used a plasma cutter to slice through the hatch. The sound was a dull sizzle in the water. Metal groaned and the way was open. I climbed inside, my suit's lights flooding the corridor. The water inside was still and clear, but the scene was one of pure chaos. Emergency lights were shattered, equipment was smashed. There were no bodies. The sea reclaims its own down here, but you could feel the violence that had happened. You could feel the panic. The data recorder was in the navigation room, aft of the main control center. I made my way through the silent, dead ship, my metal feet clanging on the deck. The feeling of being an intruder was overwhelming. A trespasser. And that's when I found the second red flag. The door to the navigation room was welded shut, not from the outside, but from the inside. A thick, ugly seam of melted metal sealed the door to its frame. Someone inside that room had been desperate to keep something out. "Eva, I've got a problem," I said, my breath catching in my throat. "The nav room is sealed from the inside." "That's not possible," she replied, her voice tight, with confusion. "Tell that to the door." I fired up the plasma cutter again. It took a long time. The metal was thick. As I cut, I felt a strange vibration. It wasn't the cutter. It was coming from inside the room. A low, resonant hum that I felt more in my bones than heard with my ears. Finally, a section of the door fell away. I pushed through the opening and into the room, and I stopped dead. Unlike the rest of the sub, this room was pristine. Charts were still laid out on the table, pencils neatly aligned. No signs of a struggle. It was like a sanctuary in the middle of a war zone. And there, sitting in the exact center of the navigator's chart table, was an object so impossible, so out of place, that my mind couldn't process it for a full 10 seconds. It was a music box, an old antique thing made of dark, polished wood and inlaid with mother of pearl. It wasn't corroded. It wasn't covered in silt. It looked like it had been placed there 5 minutes ago. Eli? What is it? What do you see? Ava's voice snapped me out of it. You're not going to believe this, I whispered. There's a music box down here. I reached out with the suit's heavy manipulator claw and carefully picked it up. Protocol is to recover any anomalous items. I secured it in a containment case on the suit's exterior. As I did, I felt that hum again, stronger this time. It felt like it was coming from the box itself. A silent song. I found the data recorder, secured it, and got out of there. The ascent felt longer than the descent. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me, something was rising from the trench with me. Back on the Triton, the music box was the center of attention. We all stood around it on the main deck table. The salt water had beaded on its polished surface, but it was otherwise perfect. It's impossible, Eva said, running a scanner over it. There's no trace of long-term water exposure. The wood isn't warped. The metal isn't corroded. It's like it's immune to the ocean. Griggs just stared at it, his face pale. This is bad luck, he muttered, crossing himself. Things from the bottom should stay on the bottom. Marcus scoffed. It's a payday is what it is. An antique like this? Bonus for us. Now open it. Eva hesitated, then gently lifted the lid. We all leaned in, and we heard nothing. Absolute silence. The little metal comb was poised over the cylinder, but it didn't move. The box was broken. Or maybe it just wasn't wound. That night, the real story began. I was in my bunk, trying to sleep, when I first heard it. A sound, faint and thin. A melody. It was a simple tune, like a child's lullaby, sorrowful and slow. I thought I was dreaming, but then I realized it was coming from outside. I went to the porthole and looked out at the black, endless water. The sound seemed to be coming from the ship's hull itself, like the Triton was humming a sad song to the sea. The next morning at breakfast, everyone was on edge. I saw the dark circles under Eva's eyes. Marcus was snapping at everyone. Did anyone else hear that last night? I asked. A kind of music? Eva looked up, startled. I thought it was the engines. Marcus slammed his coffee mug down. It was the damn wind. This ship groans. Get over it. We have a payload to secure. But Griggs was staring at me, his eyes wide with fear. It is the box, he whispered. It sings even when it is closed. He was right. The sound got stronger every night. The simple, sad lullaby would weave its way through the ship, a constant, mournful presence. And with the music came the nightmares. We all had them. Nightmares of drowning, of being trapped in the dark, of an immense, crushing pressure squeezing the air from our lungs. We'd wake up gasping, the phantom weight of the abyss still on our chests. The crew started a fray. The easy camaraderie of a small ship dissolved into suspicion and paranoia. Fights broke out over nothing. Griggs locked himself in his cabin, refusing to come out. Marcus became a tyrant, pacing the bridge day and night, his eyes bloodshot. Eva grew obsessed with the box. She had it in the lab, running every test she could think of. There's no power source, she told me, her voice trembling with a mixture of excitement and terror. No electronics. It's just wood and metal. But I'm reading a low-level acoustic resonance coming from it. It's not making the music, Eli. It's an antenna. It's receiving it from out there. She pointed towards the dark water. I knew she was right. I felt it too. A pull towards the box. A terrible curiosity. I started spending my off hours digging through the Odyssey's logs, using Eva's software to clean up the corrupted files. Most of it was routine reports. And then I found the last one. A garbled, panicked voice transmission from the sub's captain, recorded just hours before the ship went dark. It took me a day to filter out the static. When I finally played it back, the air in the comms room turned to ice. Mayday, Mayday, this is USS Odyssey. Reactor stable. Hull is secure, but we're under attack. From the inside. Can't stop the singing, the lullaby, from the trench. God, it's inside their heads. They brought it on board. Now they're... oh, God. The transmission ended with the sound of screaming, a wet, percussive thud, and then silence. My blood ran cold. They hadn't found a music box on the sub. The crew of the Odyssey had found it in the trench. Just like us, it wasn't a relic, it was bait. That night, the storm hit. It came out of nowhere. The sky turned a bruised purple, and the sea rose up in angry, mountainous waves. The Triton was tossed about like a toy, and as the storm raged outside, the song inside became a deafening roar. It was no longer a lullaby. It was a shriek, a physical pressure of sound that made your teeth ache and your vision swim. Then all the lights went out. The generators flooded. Marcus screamed over the howl of the wind. "We've lost all power. We're dead in the water." The madness took hold. Griggs burst from his cabin, wielding a heavy pipe wrench. His eyes were wild. "I will silence it!" he roared, charging for the lab where Eva was huddled with the box. Marcus intercepted him, his face a mask of pure rage. "Get away from the payload!" he bellowed, tackling the big Russian to the deck. They rolled on the floor, two madmen trying to kill each other in the dark, while the ship tore itself apart around them. I knew then what I had to do. This thing, this consciousness from the deep, wasn't haunting us. It was hunting us. It used the box as a beacon, a lure, and it used the song to crack our minds open, to make us destroy ourselves, just like it had with the crew of the Odyssey. The only way to stop it was to break the connection, to give the sea its cursed bauble back. I grabbed a flashlight and ran to the lab. Eva was on the floor, curled into a ball, her hands over her ears. The music box sat on the table, lid open, vibrating with a terrible energy. I snatched it. "Eli, no!" Eva cried. It's beautiful." Her eyes had a strange, placid look. The song had her. I ran out onto the deck. The world was chaos, wind and rain and waves crashing over the rails. I fought my way to the heavy-duty salvage winch. Marcus and Griggs were still locked in a brutal fight near the stern. I had to end this. I wrapped a heavy chain around the music box, my fingers numb from the cold and the fear. I clipped it to the winch hook. As I started to lower it, Marcus saw me. He let out a wordless roar and charged, leaving Griggs bleeding on the deck. "My prize!" he screamed, his voice barely audible over the storm. He lunged for me. We struggled there, on the edge of the heaving deck. He was strong, driven by a greed that had been twisted into madness by the trench song. He pushed me back, my heels slipping on the wet metal. I could see the dark, churning water below. With my last ounce of strength, I shoved him away and slammed my hand down on the winch release button. The chain screamed as it unspooled. The music box, a tiny dark speck, was snatched off the deck and plunged into the waves. The second it hit the water, the song stopped. It didn't fade. It didn't quiet. It just cut out. As if a switch had been thrown, the deafening, mind-shredding shriek was replaced by the natural roar of the storm. The pressure in my head vanished. The madness in Marcus's eyes flickered, replaced by a dazed confusion. Even the storm itself seemed to lose its unnatural fury, the wind lessening its scream to a howl. We were rescued 3 days later, a battered crew on a battered ship, with one man injured and a story no one would ever believe. The official report cited an unpredictable rogue wave, equipment failure, and stress-induced psychosis. The expensive data recorder from the Odyssey was officially listed as lost at sea during the storm. We all kept our mouths shut. What could we say? I took my share of the money and I walked away. I never went back to the sea. I live in the driest place I can find now, 1,000 miles from the nearest ocean. But sometimes, in the dead of night, when the wind blows just right, I can still hear it. The faint, sad echo of a lullaby. And I know that it's still down there in the crushing, silent dark, waiting patiently, humming its little song and waiting for someone else to listen.